All right, so Crime and Punishment, Osamu Tezuka, based based on the novel by Dostoevsky, which I have not finished. I started listening to the audiobook at one point. I never made it to the end, but I enjoyed it. I don't know why I didn't listen to the end. It was long. I guess that's the reason, because this I made it through no problem, because it's 200 pages or something, and I read it in under an hour, I'm pretty sure. Osamu Tezuka, you may know as the creator of Astro Boy. I've heard different numbers for how many pages he's actually written and illustrated in comics. I've heard as high as 150,000 pages. I don't know if that's true, but the point is he has done a lot of comics, or he did a lot of comics. He's no longer with us, as I say. But in such a wide career, some of his work was aimed at kids, some of it definitely aimed at adults. I read his Adolf series at one point, about not just about Adolf Hitler, about a few people named Adolf during World War II. I have not read his Buddha series. I've wanted to read that. I've read a few other books. He would just like churn out these like 800-page graphic novels. Ode to Kirihito, I think. I read that one a long time ago. Like a lot of these have not been in print ever in English, or they're slowly making their way into English. I haven't read Astro Boy. I don't even really know Astro Boy beyond just like a few cartoon images. But anyways, let's get back to Crime and Punishment. So, based on the Dostoevsky book novel, fat 600, 700 page Dostoevsky novel, the art style in this is pretty cartoony, and it's kind of unusual, the style that Tezuka uses, because the content, sometimes like characters will be like, hey, why don't you stop being a prostitute? But they're like almost it's like Disney's Crime and Punishment, I guess. Although the things that happen, there are well, I don't want to give away any spoilers in case you're not familiar with the story. I didn't know how it was going to end because I had never finished it. So the art is pretty simple, but it's really exaggerated. There's this one character whose nose like stretches out for some reason. So you have this really serious story with, police, dragoons, like hauling people away, and this kind of bitter atmosphere. But then you have this kind of cartooniness to it, in which a character's nose stretches out. So it's a very odd mix. I will say that this edition, I don't know who published this, emanga.com, or aka.com. It has quite a few typos in English. I feel like they could have used a better editor, could have cleaned it up a little more. But it was worth a read. I don't know if I'm going to read, like, I don't feel like it was wonderful, but I feel like I like the art. I like the art more than anything. Because you're condensing such a fat novel into a small amount of space, you create this version where you have to have these really abrupt changes. Does anyone remember the Classics Illustrated volumes from the like 40s or 50s, the comics? They would have these really beautiful painted covers, but then inside they would have this kind of like mediocre art for the most part. Take something like Hamlet or the Odyssey or whatever and turn it into a 32-page comic. So basically every page you have like 500, not 500 pages. You have 50 pages. In some cases, things like Moby Dick or something, they'll take the entire book and condense it into the very super. It's like a Cliff Notes of the Cliff Notes version. This is not quite that extreme because 200 pages, but it is condensed, and I wouldn't say it's very different, because I think it came out in 1953 or so. Very different from some of the other Osamu Tezuka I've read. I think Ode to Kirihito came out in the 70s, and if I had seen that and this art style, I wouldn't think they were the same person. It's that different. I don't know who I'm recommending this for. I guess if you are a Osamu Tezuka fan and you want to read everything, if you're a Dostoevsky fan and you want to read all the adaptations of Crime and Punishment, or if you just want to read a 1 hour or less version of Crime and Punishment, this may be your book. I would not say it's a great graphic novel, but it's interesting, and I wish it had been a little cleaner. Some of the lettering and editing could have just been a little better. But there were some interesting moments. There was this one moment where he uses this metaphor for a moth going to the flame, and then we get this like 2-page sequence with a moth and a flame without any dialogue, just illustrations, and a moth turns into this kind of like Tinkerbellish woman character. You see that? And then, I mean, there's a end note by Tezuka in which I guess when he was doing this, some of it he actually illustrated while riding a train to work or something. I don't know. Like, the guy was diehard. He clearly did a lot of comics. I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't say I love it, and I wouldn't say you got to read this. But if you are curious about how, a Japanese interpretation of Crime and Punishment, that's interesting on its own. I liked the art. I did like the art. It was very Disney-like, kind of like Pinocchio. I think you must have seen Pinocchio because the main character looks kind of like Pinocchio. Yeah, there you are, Crime and Punishment.